You know, not a lot of films surprised me or left me with my jaw on the floor. If you're new, my name is Lurch Frankie Wilkes, and welcome to the Clintonville Slasher. I want to talk about this film right now, NOSFERATU 2024. Now, minor spoilers, warning ahead. I am going to do some spoilers. I'm not going to do all of them, but I am going to give you my opinions, the rundown of the film, and some of the key points in the movie that may be spoilers. So, the little rundown of the film. So this Nosferatu film stars Bill Skarsgård, Lily Rose Depp, Thomas Hoyt, and Willem Dafoe, among many, many others. Now, a little rundown of the film is that Lily Rose Depp actually plays a girl named Ellen. Now, when Ellen is younger, she has these insane night terrors about how she can see kind of like see the other side, have these premonitions and things like that, and she calls out to anything to help her. And the only thing that responds to her is a shadow, and he says that you no longer belong to the living, you belong to me now. So the very opening sequence of this film is very cool, very gothic, very dark. It's amazing, and it's just the shadow of Orlok, which looks awesome. He's speaking in, I believe it's German. Years later, Ellen meets Thomas, and they fall in love. And Thomas is trying to make a name for himself at his firm, where he's selling houses. And he goes to work, and when he goes to work, he meets with his boss. And just like the original 1922 version, his boss sends him to the Carpathian Mountains to Count Orlok's house to sell him a home in where Thomas lives, basically almost his neighbor. And so he sends him out there. So Thomas tells Ellen that he's going to go. He's going to go make a name for himself. He's going to make the sale. It's like the sale of a lifetime. So, but Ellen pleads with Thomas. She says, please don't go. I really need you to stay. I don't want you to go. I have this terrible, terrible feeling. And so he's like, I have to. So Thomas leaves Ellen with their two friends, Frederick and Anne, and their two daughters. And then Thomas goes to the Carpathian Mountains to meet with Count Orlok. On the way out there, he runs across. Now, forgive me for saying this. I don't like this word, but they were described as gypsies. I don't like the word. I don't like that word. I don't think that should describe anybody. But he comes across this village of people, and they're dancing and they're singing, and they kind of laugh at him. And he says, "Hey, I want a place to stay." And they're like, "No." And so he's like, "Oh, I really just need a place." So they finally give in, and they give him a place to stay. And he sees this, and later that night he sees him doing this weird chant, this cool ritual where they have they're like, take the virgin, and she's on this horse. There's this naked lady on a horse, and they're riding into the graveyard where they're cracking open crypts and shoving stakes through what they call vampires. And he's like, what the fuck is going on? So he leaves the next day, and he's warned by one of the villagers not to go to the Count's house, to stay away from the shadows. She says she's warning him, and he's like, I have to go. So when he wakes up the next morning and he goes out there, he doesn't have a horse. They took his horse from him because they think that if they took his horse, then he won't go. So anyway, he makes the long journey the rest of the way up into the Carpathian Mountains to where he is met by this stagecoach. The stagecoach picks him up and takes him to the Count's house. And as they're driving, they get into the Count's house. And that's when you first meet Count Orlok. Bill Skarsgård is Count Orlok. And just the way he speaks, the midnight hour has passed. You are late. You will address me as your lord. I mean, this voice is spot on. So Thomas sells him a house. He sells him a house, and Thomas starts to feel different and sick. And the Count won't let him leave. Meanwhile, back home, Ellen is still having these horrific night terrors, and she's in this trance where she cannot get out of it. And and so she's having these night terrors, and Frederick and Anne have no idea what to do. They're like completely clueless on how to help her. So and then there's a doctor that works at the insane asylum where Thomas's boss ends up showing up, and he's like biting the heads off pigeons and talking about how he's his Lord's master, how he has his master, and he's coming, and all this other weird shit, and he's like biting the heads off different animals, and just like in the original, that guy is Orlok's like familiar, and in the original, he's not eating birds and stuff, he's like eating bugs, but this one is way different. Like bites the head off a pigeon. It's gnarly. So as Ellen is having these night terrors, they call upon the doctor that like discovered Thomas's boss is all nuts, and they call upon him, and they're like, we don't know what to do, blah blah. And he's like, well, let me go find one of these, this professor, and this professor is played by Willem Dafoe, who basically says that she's cursed and that she's like in this trance and the vampire is coming after her. And Orlok holds Thomas for like for a few days until Thomas discovers who Count Orlok is actually a vampire. He tries to escape. Orlok sends his wolves after him, and he falls off. Off the ledge into the water. Who is rescued by a convent. Later, he comes back and meets with Anne, and Orlok is in the ship. And Orlok gets on a ship to go to his new home. Now, when Orlok's on the ship, all the people are starting to be like sick from the plague, and when Orlok ends up like wasting everybody on the ship, and the ship ends up crashing. Well, Frederick's actually like the ship master, and when it crashes, they're just nothing but plague rats just flood the city, and slowly everybody dies. Well, Orlok goes and sees Ellen and tells her that she has 3 days to submit to him willingly, or I'm going to kill your husband. And during those 3 days, Frederick suffers insane loss. I'll leave it at that because I don't want to ruin that part. But Orlok gives Ellen 3 days time. And he says, I'm going to give you like 3 days, or I'm going to take your husband. I'm going to take everything you want, everything you've ever loved. So, in those 3 times, like Frederick and Anne, they suffer immensely. And then towards the end of the movie, it's told you that Willem Dafoe basically tells Ellen, and he's like, listen, you have to be the willing sacrifice. You have to go to him willingly, and he will die. And then at the very end of the movie, you got Thomas and Willem Dafoe and the doctor going to destroy Orlok's coffin, which Thomas believes that they're there, but Orlok is coming after Anne, and she sacrifices herself, and then Count Orlok bursts he dies in the sunlight. Now, what I thought about this movie, like I said before, there's not a lot of films out there that make my jaw drop at the end of them, where I'm just fucking floored. This movie scores across the board. Directed by Robert Eggers. He did The Witch, The Northman, he did The Lighthouse, which I've never seen. And now he's done this one. And I guess this movie got greenlighted like 10 years ago, but it kept falling apart. And so when everybody got casted, I think that Willem Dafoe being in this movie is so awesome because of the Shadow of the Vampire. Now, the Shadow of the Vampire is about Count Orlok being an actual vampire pretending to be an actor. And I thought that was cool. I've actually never seen that, but I know the premise of it, so I want to check that out. This film took a lot of the original and took a lot of the books, especially like Bram Stoker's Dracula, the original Nosferatu from 1922. That is basically an adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. So I actually didn't know that Bram Stoker came out first. Dracula came out before Nosferatu, which I thought it was really cool. But the lighting in this movie was amazing. The special effects were awesome. The cinematography was great. Every actor in this movie fucking killed their roles, and they nailed it. Orlok He sounds cool. He looks cool. He's got a sexy mustache. He like at the end of the movie, he's like on top of Anne, and he's all creepy and gross and skinny and he looked awesome. And he didn't like burst into flames. He like does this whole fucking thing where he just bleeds out of his eyes, and it was really cool. And she sacrifices herself. And I thought, damn man, that like I was left just floored of how good that this film was. It's the best movie of 2024. I don't think we'll ever see another romantic gothic horror film like we did today, like we did this Christmas. And I was inspiring. It was jaw-dropping. It was outstanding on every account. Was so just fucking amazing. Like I said, I've never left the theater floored, where I had to like think about it for a few days. Like I was like, well, I don't know what to say about it. Like I don't know how to feel, because it drove you through every different emotion. It drove you through happy. It was happy. It was funny when it had to be. It was scary. It was, you know, sad. It was romantic. It was just all these emotions that went through you in 2 hours that were just like left you just wow, like wow. The performances, the costume design. Excuse me. This movie is going to win a pile of Oscars, and if it doesn't, I'm going to be mad. Robert Eggers really needs to do more horror movies, because the more horror movies he does, they're just fucking bangers. So I can't say enough great things about this film. It took a lot of the original film, and it took a lot from the 70s, and it just kind of like, even like a little bit of the Shadow of the Vampire, which I've heard, and they just kind of drug it in there, and they just sucked it all into one, and it was really, really good. And I haven't seen a better gothic vampire movie since Bram Stoker's in 92. Like, if you put these films side by side, they're pretty much the same, but this is a newer adaptation, this newer gothic like love story. It was just fucking fantastic. So if you've never seen it, if you're new to the channel, please like, comment, subscribe. Stay horror. Happy Saturday, and go see NOSFERATU. Later days.